Hello and welcome to the video. Today I'd like to share with you how I completed the Wehrmacht Generalissimus mode campaign for Panzer Corps 2. As you can see here, on June 17th, 2024, I completed the Wehrmacht Generalissimus mode campaign. This campaign has only been completed in this mode by 1.3% of players, and today I'd like to show you guys my strategy on how to complete the campaign. Okay, in order to show you the most important thing, I'm going to load up a brand new game on Generalissimus mode here. Generalissimus, only the best of the best will beat this level. Negative 80% prestige. In this game, prestige is like money, plus 20% base accuracy to the enemy, which means you're going to get hit a lot more and they're going to be able to deal a lot more damage to you when you're playing. I'm just going to click through all the tabs that I chose for my general. This is the most important thing that you can do. Every little step matters in Generalissimus mode. You saw the negative debuffs that you have. I would play through different levels 2 or 3 times just to complete it, maximizing my prestige game, adjusting my army in order to get the most out of the army. And I'm continuously going and back saving to make the best move possible because it's necessary just to complete the game in Generalissimus mode. Okay, so this is how I chose to set up my general. You have strengths and weaknesses. Let's go over the weaknesses first. No overstrength. That's right. So typically the units have a strength of 10 with infantry units having a strength of 15. I was not able to overstrength them. The units are able to overstrength as soon as they gain experience levels, and the experience levels are 1 through 5. So the first level of experience, the first star that you get, you're able to say put one of your units from, for instance, 10 to 11 and so on and so forth. So no overstrengthening the units. Retrograde gets new equipment 6 months later than normal. So you might transition from Panzer IV to Tiger 1 campaign later, basically. So it does hurt you, but when you see the strengths, that kind of balances it out. Green Army elite replacements are limited to 3 times per mission, but since I'm not overstrengthening, I don't really care about elite replacements. Elite replacements are kind of a double-edged sword because they cost so much more to replace your units when they get damaged that you tend to run out of prestige quicker. Inefficient supply. Units get reduced supply at the beginning of their turn. We're on the offensive. I didn't really have any particular problems with supply ever. It might have been because of this buff that I'll go over later. Friendly unit in a hex cancels out enemy zone of control in that hex. So that basically means that all of your touching units can move 1 space ahead, even into territory they wouldn't have been able to move past, like in between 2 units. Because all of my units are usually touching, making encirclements, I believe that helped my reinforcements, my supply rather, but I'm not sure about that. It's just what I speculate. Poor ground control. Enemy units can freely move through zone of control. Again, I'm on the offensive the whole time as Germany here. So I don't really care if they can kind of swarm me. I'm swarming them. That's why I'm able to take this debuff and still exploit it. Slow modernization can upgrade it no more than 3 units per mission. Transport upgrades and overstrengths do not count. This is one of the hardest ones to do because you basically are using Green Army with slow modernization. So we're not overstrengthening. We're not worrying about experience. We're literally deleting some of our units and purchasing completely fresh ones. And then what we modernize is going to be 3 tanks. That does have a few variations when you get a new fighter, but tanks and fighters, in my opinion, are the best units in this game. Going to the strength side, all infantry unit cost 25% less per slot. So your army at the top of the screen will only have so many slots. And that's basically how big your army can be. So an infantry unit might take up 3 or 4 slots. If it was 4 slots, it only takes up 3. So you can have a little bigger of an army. Same with Panzer General. All tank unit cost 25% less slots. So again, you can have more units on the battlefield. Liberator, plus 50% prestige for capturing flag. Prestige, as I said before, is like money in this game. Prestige is largely going to determine how far you get in your campaign. So getting the extra prestige is critical. Operational initiative, all units get +4, +3, +2 initiative on the first 3 turns and +1 on all subsequent turns. I kind of see initiative as an extra bonus luck roll. Your first 4 turns are going to be your most important no matter what. And you're going to have these extra bonuses in your first 4 turns. It's kind of nice to have. Master of Blitzkrieg, all tanks get +1 movement point and cross minor rivers easier. That means you almost never need to have a bridging unit. The bridging units take up extra slots in your army, and they don't attack or defend very well. They just simply give you an option to cross a river, and you can make deep dives with your tanks if need be. Incredibly important. Trophies of War gets 2x more captured equipment and 2x more prestige when forcing enemy units to surrender. So again, you get prestige buffs from this. I rarely ever used the captured equipment that I got. It's mainly just for the prestige. Deadly Grasp. Encircled enemy units suffer 2x penalties. So that means if I make an encirclement, and we'll go over how I do that later in the video, I then get 2x the penalties on against the encircled enemy unit. Effectively, when they're encircled, they can't attack out of the pocket as easily. And a lot of the times they weren't able to do almost anything once they're in the pocket. Flexible command. Splitting units does not consume unit slots. Also, any unit can split and merge any number of times in a single turn. So normally when you split up a unit, it would consume extra slots. So you'd have to leave space in your army in order to split units. This one, you can split them freely to make the encirclements. You're encircling the enemy divisions. Since they're in a pocket with Deadly Grasp and they have the negative modifiers, I'm not worried that they're like half strength units. Killer Team starts the game with 3 additional heroes. Heroes are individual guys in your military that you can place on your units, and they give you extremely good buffs. And I was typically getting a new hero after every scenario, but this gives you 3 in the beginning of the game, and how you start the game is how you're going to snowball out through the whole campaign, and it's very important to get these bonuses early. Perimeter Control. Friendly unit in a hex cancels enemy zone of control in that hex. Basically what this does is allow you to make the encirclement, because typically you're not able to pass through 2 enemy units, but when one of your units touches one of the blocked areas that are free, now you can move into that area 1 unit at a time. So I usually split them up and then start encircling the unit 1 unit at a time. And I'll go ahead and demonstrate that now. Okay, so here we are on the last scenario, Pacific in Reach. And as you can see here, Los Angeles is over here, San Francisco is over here, and you start on the other side of the Rockies, to the east of the Rockies in the American Midwest. But we have several tanks here that we're going to encircle. So I'm going to demonstrate to you my encirclement strategy. So we hit the split button. I like to call it the egg button. And I'll choose this infantry division first. As you can see at the top here, I'm using all my core slots. And as I split these units, they don't consume more core slots. So I'm able to split them freely. So this division can only move this far. But if I split up this Tiger 2, all of a sudden it can move past this zone of control here because I'm touching the hexagon next to it. So in this way, we just keep snaking around the enemy divisions until we have them all encircled. So this guy's encircled here. It's not a total encirclement. So if I attack into him and I hit him hard enough, he'll simply move back. So let's see if I can get him to move back here. And then we don't get the surrender. The surrenders are going to net us 2 extra prestige and all the equipment. So you'll see the prestige go up here at the top. So let's go ahead and make this unit right here surrender. So we're at 4,679 prestige. As you can see, if you're encircled and everyone is surrounding and touching each other, you get the added bonuses of mass attack. We went from 4679 to 4713 there. So you could see the benefit of getting the extra prestige from encirclements, and we should also have that equipment here in our stockpile. So here is all the equipment that I've captured over my campaign. Let's try another encirclement and see if we get the equipment. So we have an enemy Jeep here. Let's go ahead and try to take that out. I'm going to soften it up a bit. So we'll go ahead and check here under recon, because the Jeep should be a recon tank. So currently I have Willys Jeep 10, Gaz 67B. I think that's the Russian version 4. And this is a 57th Willys Jeep. So let's make him surrender. We're at 4713. And it looks like we got 30 points of prestige. And it looks like we got 2 extra Jeeps. I chose to go Poland North. In my campaign, you can go Poland North or Poland South. And here's the makeup of my army. Fighters are going to be incredibly important in order to gain air superiority. And gaining air superiority on about turn 2 or 3 is ideal, as the enemy bombers will heavily damage your units. You want to go heavy on the fighters, growing 2 fighters into a total of 9 fighters in order to completely wipe the enemy's air. And then once that's done, you can use the fighters still for ground attack. And then you don't have to worry about your bombers being hit by anything but enemy AA. And once you have that air superiority, you will just fly through the map. So this is my first setup. We have 4 tanks. We have 1 recon. I believe that this is given to you. Recon on the early levels are fine, because they're able to move quite a few spaces. So the movement is 8. That's incredibly good. But the question is whether they're going to be knocked out or not. If you're losing the recon completely, or they're just getting taken down to like 1 out of 10 every attack, they're not going to be as useful to you, since the tanks can mimic recon, because one of those general buffs allowed us to move across areas extremely quickly. And tanks typically early move like, let's see, this Panzer 2C, the tanks move like 5, and then they'll grow into like moving 6. And when they get bigger, when you get into Tigers, Tiger 2's, Yad Tigers, they'll only move 4. But still, you don't need that much movement unless you want a VP rush, which is a completely different strategy. We want individual units that can maintain encirclements so that breakouts don't occur after we've encircled. So I think I dropped the recon probably at scenario 2. Artillery is good to take out the enemy entrenchments. Mainly enemies are going to be entrenched in cities, and it's going to be quite hard to attacks on to units that are heavily entrenched. And that's why you have Stuka dive bombers. So the JU-87B is going to grow into the JU-D. And I used the JU-D up until the last scenario, where I went and switched to the Heinkel version of the tactical bomber. So literally you could keep your Stukas the whole game. And I only used about 6 at most, because they're good at attacking enemy armor. And when you get to the Soviet Union, the enemy armor is going to be very good on the Soviet side. And you need that tactical bomber in order to kind of break up the Soviet armor. It's going to be the best thing for you, because the Soviet armor won't be able to attack back at the Stukas. So you basically take the hit points away from the big armor, and they can't deal any damage to you, particularly if you're using a lot of fighters, because enemy fighters won't be able to touch the Stukas. The other way that you defeat enemy fortified positions is through pioneers. And pioneers have bunker killer +5. So you will run into bunkers that are just fortified emplacements. And sometimes if you just bypass them, they will affect your supply negatively. So in certain situations, you have to attack the bunkers. In other situations, just move past them as long as they're not affecting your supply. Entrenchment support. All adjacent friendly units entrench at 2x the speed, so you get a little more defense. Minesweeper instantly clears minefields. You will run into minefields, so that's quite good. Military engineer ignores enemy entrenchments. If there is an engineer next to both attacking friendly unit and its target, the friendly unit will also ignore up to 4 points of enemy entrenchment. So that means a normal infantry, this their Infanterie will basically get that bonus if it's touching an engineer. And since we're breaking our divisions into halves, like if this was an engineer and this was a normal infantry, it would get that bonus, and then another infantry on the side would also get the bonus. So with this strategy, you have to kind of be comfortable at splitting up your units. They'll have less HP, and you also have to be aware of counterattacks where these smaller units will get destroyed. The next thing that's OP about this build strategy is that I just split this unit up. If one of the two parts gets destroyed, it does not destroy the whole unit. So that means I can just click this button here, replace, and the unit will go back up to its normal strength, and I do not have to purchase a new unit under the purchase screen here. So let's go ahead and do a test here. So in order to reinforce the strength of this Pioneer unit, the replacement cost in between scenarios, we're here at the Battle of Stalingrad. So it's at a unit strength of 6. It will cost 82 to replace. It will cost 165 to do an elite replacement. So that conserves the XP, these stars down here on the unit. As you can see, we have no XP. It's completely useless to do elite replacements on this unit here. And it costs about twice as much to do the elite replacements. And that's why I'm not using it, because your prestige pool up here needs to stay high to buy the new types of equipment. Every single piece of equipment is going to need to be deleted and replaced. As you can see, if you disband a unit, you will gain XP from disbanding the unit. So that also conserves prestige. So here we are on the scenario previous to Stalingrad, and we could see that we're in the field. We're not in between scenarios. And in between scenarios, it was going to cost 82 prestige to replace this division right here. To replace the unit in the scenario as you're actively attacking, you're on the battlefield, it's going to cost 103. So it's going to cost about 20% more prestige replacing with regular replacements while you're in a battle. So you will conserve 20% more prestige when you're in between scenarios. The strategy behind that is, if you're at the end of this scenario, as I am right now, don't replace your units. That's why most of my units are under strength, because all I want to do is get over here to the last victory point, and then I'll simply go in between the scenarios in the army setup phase, and I'll replace them then for 20% less prestige cost. And this conserves a lot of prestige over time. So here we are at the last scenario, Pacific and Reach. And as you can see, I have the ME-262s, the Schwabel, and I'm all the way up to San Francisco. All the other VPs on the map are taken, and the enemy has 0 air. As a matter of fact, they only have a few destroyers and 1 unit left in San Francisco. So you're completely wiping the map. Here is the HS-129B3 that I used only in this scenario. As soon as I got up to the Stuka dive bomber D, I just kept it because it's so good at ground attack. So this division right here, this unit is encircled in San Francisco, so it's going to receive a lot of penalties. And I'm just going to take it out, and we'll see what happens here at the end of the whole Generalissimus campaign on doing the Wehrmacht campaign. So we surrender that unit, we get their equipment, and we get some prestige from that. And then boom, we take San Francisco, ending the whole campaign. As you can see here, the TAC bombers have the best kill to death ratios up here at the top. So essentially, they're dealing a lot of damage and taking very few damage. The Gustav is another thing here. That is a rail gun. So it's a huge gun that's put on a trolley on a railroad. As soon as you get that, you need to maintain that through the whole campaign. I don't think that there's a way of winning this without the Gustav. So if you lose the Gustav, you're going to have to go to a back save and start all over again, because it is devastating. It can literally take out anything in its path. Sometimes it could take a unit from 10 to 0. Most of the time it takes a unit that's 10 down to like 1. So incredibly important that you keep the Gustav, and you can never replace the Gustav. If we end the scenario here, unfortunately, there's no end screen. It just ends the game at this point. I know back in Panzer General, you got a speech from the officer that's talking to you, and it was really cool. But for Panzer Corps 2, that's it. You just get the achievements. Here's the Gustav right here, somewhere in California. I'm going to move the ME-262 out of the way. And you can see it's down to 3, but it has special bonuses. So it has single entity, always attacks as if its strength were at maximum. So basically, you just need to not allow this unit to be destroyed. The main thing that's going to destroy this unit is enemy infantry. Other than that, the air doesn't do much to it. Enemy tanks don't even do much to it. So you can even put it as a frontline unit in certain scenarios, but this is the best thing in this campaign, is the Gustav. And you can see here, soft attack is 80, hard attack is 48. If I go to, let's say this Tiger 2 over here, the soft attack is 22 and the hard attack is 30. So you can see how devastating that is. Keep your Gustav healthy. Keep it till the end of the game. That's the only way you're going to do this and complete the Wehrmacht campaign. Okay, so here's one of the hardest scenarios that I encountered during this campaign, and it's Moscow. And I really had to juggle up my army composition here. And it's fun to go back and see how your army changes over time. As you can see, most of the units don't have experience on them at all. None of them are over strength. We are currently using 4 fighters, and I transitioned into strategic bombers in order to help take out the many forts that are in Moscow, as well as reduce the entrenchment of the troops in Moscow, because city tiles typically give a bonus to defense in entrenchment. As you can see, there's also these fortifications. They'll also give bonuses to entrenchment. So only 4 fighters right now, but as I said before, that grows into 9 as your enemy starts getting better fighters and air power against you. Remember that we had chosen the slow upgrade debuff on our general, so we're not going to get the best fighters right away. That's why you need so many of them. And I believe I only chose 4 fighters for this scenario because half of the scenario is fought in the snow. Therefore, air power, you're only allowed to use that half of the time. So I kind of worked around it that way. And we're heavier on the artillery here so that we can break down the entrenchments of fortified Moscow. We actually have 7 tanks at this point, and we're using a bevy of infantry because infantry is quite cheap. If they get destroyed, you can easily replace them, and they don't take up a lot of core slots. And this is about midway in the whole campaign, and you can see we only have 86 core slots, but we have something like 170 by the time we reach Pacific and reach the last scenario. So your core slots gradually grow over time, but the units also take up more slots over time. So another reason why I'm using the tanks is that they're only taking 2 core slots up here for each tank. As you get into Tiger 2's, they take up 7 core slots. And remember that that's reduced by 20% because of our general buff, as well as going wide on the infantry. Those core slots were reduced by 25% as well. So it was 25% reduced slots on the tanks. So these tanks are typically probably 3 slots. And then the infantry, so if this is a Pioneer, it's at 3, it usually takes up 4 slots. So going wide on the infantry and the tanks is very good, particularly because more units on the battlefield means more encirclement. So here's a particularly interesting scenario. You're conquesting America, going through New York here, all the way down to Florida. A few pointers here. I concentrated my army in the north, and you can get the Gustav, the railgun, in after you take out, I believe you have to take this port in New York. You can actually place the Gustav here. One of the most interesting things here is you only have 1 carrier, and that only provides you with so many air slots. So I only have 7 air slots. It looks like I attacked this fortification up here in the north. And then I've got 7 other air units just waiting in the queue. And I take this air base up here at Quebec, and then I spawn them in later. So even though I didn't place all these units on the battlefield, they're still under undeployed units. So even though I can't bring all my units to bear on the battlefield, it's kind of like a delayed technique because these Stukas are so important. As you can see here again, I'm using the Ju-87D, even this late into the war. And we have 1 prototype Messerschmitt 262 that was not able to actually take off on the carrier, so it has to have a ground base. I saved that here under the undeployed units tab till I get this airport, and then it comes in absolutely shreds. Same with the Gustav. One very interesting point here about naval combat, there's going to be only two major scenarios that you use a lot of naval combat, because mainly you're going to be fighting a lot of wars against the USSR. But when you take out the UK on the Sea Lion scenario, and when you take out the US during the conquest of the United States scenario, you will have subs, and then it's pretty cool. You do get like a Bismarck class battleship here. You get two of them, as well as there's a Königsberg class, and there's Admiral Hipper right there. There's Schnarrenhorst right there, which is kind of like a pocket battleship, not a full battleship. So it's really cool, as well as the Italian Navy. There's the Littorio right there, and there's a Trento class right there. So everything's like historically named. I find it really cool. I hope you do. Here's the most important part, is the Type 9C German sub. These subs will be able to take out battleships with no problem. And in the south, you don't have a lot of naval power other than the subs. You see, you have 3 submarines here. So what you can do is set up traps so that the battleships that are away from their screens will actually run into these subs. So you're actually going to be able to attack twice. So what you could do with the subs is just place them in an area that the AI can't see, and then eventually the battleships will come in late and run into your subs. So you'll attack them then, and then you'll attack. So the sub will get an attack when the battleship is surprised and runs into the submarine. And then on your turn, you get to attack the battleship again. That's largely how I won this scenario, was with these 3 subs here in the initial phase, just running and hiding. You can actually switch them so they can dive. And when they dive, they can move 1 space less, but their visibility, the enemy's visibility of them, goes way down. So the subs during naval combat, incredibly important. Use them like you use the Stukas, and protect them and set them up in ambush scenarios where you could take out a battleship. I took out 4 battleships just by using the strategy that I told you about on this scenario. So that's going to do it for this video, guys. Thank you guys for joining me, and I hope this helps you out in your Wehrmacht campaign on Panzer Corps 2. It's a lot of fun. I've been playing this game since I was a kid in the Panzer General series. I believe there's Panzer General 1, 2, 3, and 4. I was able to complete those games on very high difficulties. And then I went through Panzer Corps as well, being able to complete that in von Manstein mode, which is kind of a rank higher than Generalissimus. Thanks for watching, guys. I'll see you on the next one.